Here are some quick, very important clay facts. Clay that is a work in progress or clay that is not being used must be kept in a closed container or a bag or it will dry out. Never throw away extra clay and never throw away dry clay. Dry clay can be re-wet down and used again. As long as it has not ever been fired, it can be used again. Leftover or extra clay can be stored in a bag or container. A lot of exposure to clay dust is not good for us, so it's really important to clean your table very well. If you just carefully spray it down with soap and water, and then you're going to go back and forth going one way to wipe your table to most efficiently get off all of the clay dust possible. Clay can be pretty stubborn, so you may have to repeat this process more than one time. It's helpful to use a clay-only placemat while you're working to make cleanup go a lot quicker and prevent as much clay dust on the tables as possible. If you need to, you can shake your placemat off in the trash can to keep the little pieces of dried out clay getting on your table or on the floor. When you're attaching two pieces of clay, it's important to scratch or score the surface, and then you're going to use a mixture of water and clay, or just water in most cases when we practice, to attach the two pieces. Once you have scratched the surface and added a little water, you're going to gently press them together. If you skip this step, often the pieces will just fall apart once the clay dries out. For example, if you wanted to attach this circle shape to this hand shape, you would scratch the surface, add water, and then press the two scratched surfaces together. You only need a small amount of water to attach pieces or to smooth out your clay. If you use too much water, it will become very frustrating to work with. The reason why is because the more water that you add to clay, the more squishy it becomes and much harder it becomes to shape into special shapes or to smooth out the surface. Also, it's important to remember that clay should be probably no thicker than your thumb or no thicker than your pinky, because if it's too thick, air bubbles will get trapped, and then when it gets fired in the kiln, there's a possibility that it could break. And it could also possibly break surrounding students' work as well. The reason why is because when air is heated up, such as in the kiln, it expands, and if it has nowhere to go, it's going to put pressure on the inside of your clay, causing it to break. This is your classroom kiln. It is basically an oven specifically designed for clay. It gets to be thousands of degrees, so it's very important that you stay out of the kiln room unless you have special permission from an adult. Clay has a lot of different stages. When it is gray, it is called greenware. That means that it has not ever been in the kiln, it has not been heated and fired. When it is white in appearance, that means it has been fired at least once and it takes on a different texture. It becomes kind of like glass. And then finally, after it's fired one time, unless you have a special glaze, you can add glaze to it, which is a glass coating. When you apply glaze, it looks kind of like chalky paint, but then after it gets heated in the kiln, it becomes the glass shiny texture. It's very important to remember not to glaze the bottom of a clay piece because it could fuse to the kiln shelf while it's being fired, and then when you try to get it off, there's a good chance your clay piece could break. Also, always remember your name on the bottom before it gets fired. As I said, clay has a lot of different stages, and some of the stages are very fragile. It's so important to handle your work with care and never touch someone else's work.